Hello, I'm Matthew Brown. This is the little introductory video I'm making for you as beginning to our time together on sports and societies in South America, 1860 to 1930, our final year unit, in which we're going to seek not to work out who won what in which sports through the late 19th, early 20th century in South America, but instead seek to understand how the activities which became popular across the continent in this period, often called the first globalization, how they became popular, why they became popular, and how they acquired the meanings which are often given to them today in the early 21st century of principal ways of expressing emotions, identities, and promoting public health across the republics that make up the South American landmass. Now, I'm doing this little video for you because I thought it'd be a nice way of introducing things, but also to give you just a short explanation of how we're going to teach the unit and how you can structure your learning going from here. I taught a version of this course last year to second years during what maybe we'll look back and call the deep pandemic. During total lockdown, we didn't meet inside a classroom at all, so I recorded all of the lectures like this on the GoPro at various sporting locations across town, from the cricket club to the Rovers and Bristol City stadiums and all sorts of places. And then we had 1 hour seminars, which really didn't feel to me to be enough to really go into any of the material in detail. So I've taken the decision this year, because we've got a 2 hour seminar space together on a Friday afternoon, I've taken the decision not to do any real lecturing of any kind, but instead to share with you the recordings of last year's lectures, which are all still on YouTube and are if I dare say so myself, unsurpassable in the intensity with which I brought my material to life out here in the open. So what I thought I'd do is I share those with you each week, and then we can dedicate ourselves in the seminars to discussing the primary sources and talking about the material, whether it's the material in the lectures or in the reading that I'm going to give you each week. So that's why I'm giving you this one live, as it were, lecture. Today's the 18th of January 2021, so the week before our course starts. I've come here to Eastville Park, just down the road from my house in East Bristol, and to the BMX pump track, which, as you can see, isn't really used by many people during the autumn and winter, but it's quite a fun place during the rest of the year. And I want you to be thinking, as we're going through the first weeks of the unit, not just about the people who played sports and the identities that they developed and the feelings of community that were constructed through sport, but also about the places where they were performed, the bits of cities, the bits of countryside where sporting activities took place. Just spotted a very handy little spot for me to sit, so I just perch here. So what are we going to do? We're going to have the lectures online, but then our face-to-face seminars, we're going to have 2 hours together. In those we'll be talking about a vast range of primary sources. We'll also be creative, we'll do activities to try and understand the history in different ways. It won't just be book reading and book learning. Why are we doing 1860 to 1930? Well, this is the period that's often called by historians the birth of the modern world, the period of history when societies and cultures were transformed into something that looks pretty similar to the way we live now. So this is the period that saw the introduction of cross-Atlantic rapid communication, first through the telegraph and then through radio, so that by the time we end our period, 1930, we're having live continental broadcasts of radio and of boxing and football matches. It's the period when Latin America becomes pulled into the international economy, principally as the exporter of raw materials for Europe and North America to transform into products. So that means Chile becoming one of the world's principal producers and exporters of copper. It means the rubber that went to form the tyres of bicycles and cars coming out of the Brazilian, Colombian and Peruvian Amazon. It's obviously the same precious metals, the gold and silver being exported from Peru and Mexico. And then it's also the foodstuffs that come to be exported to fuel the labourers of Europe and North America, whether that's beef from Argentina, banana from Colombia, or the sugar that comes out of the Caribbean from Venezuela to Cuba. So it's a key period of that historians have recognised as a key period of social and economic transformation in South America, leading up to, and we end in 1930, which is when the first men's FIFA World Cup is held in Uruguay. Now, it sometimes seems a bit of a historical anomaly that the first FIFA World Football Cup was held in South America and not in Europe, where FIFA was based, or in Britain, where football was supposedly invented. And so part of our questioning during the course is to really think about, well, were sports more important in South America than they were elsewhere? Was there something about the politics and the social connections of the continent that meant watching men and women perform sporting activities, watching their bodies in multicultural societies, somehow gave sports greater political and social meaning than elsewhere, and therefore that states like the Uruguayan state were more tempted to invest in hosting these international competitions so that they could prove themselves to be superior to other places. So those are the kind of things we'll be digging into. Why did people start playing sports, and what were the political and cultural meanings that were associated with them? Now, of course, one of the joys for you, I suppose, is that rather than studying a literature unit where people have written book after book analysing the novels that you're reading, sports history is still a pretty marginalised form of university endeavour, I think. So there's not as much out there as there would be if you were studying the Third French Republic or the Second World War or whatever. So I see it as my role as acting as a guide for you, directing you towards the interesting scholarship that's out there, but also to the gaps within that scholarship where nobody's looked to try and answer the questions that are interesting us. And so as we move into the middle of the course and towards the second half of the course, I'll be giving you some training in primary research methods so that you can then go out and find the sources that nobody's looked for and nobody's found before, in order to bring new light, proper original research onto the histories of sports in South America. And we can do that now because in the last few years there's been a rapid wave of digitisation of primary source materials, principally newspapers, but also the archives of Sports Club. So there's some cool stuff out there. It can take some looking for, and so I'll guide you towards it and hopefully mean that you're producing for the second essay for the unit some really original, interesting pieces of work. I think that's probably enough. Let's just conclude with something about me. I asked you to email me with the answer to some 5 questions about why you like sports, why you've chosen the unit, whether you're interested in history, that kind of thing. So let me do you the respect of answering the same things back to you. We can talk about these more in our first seminar on Friday next week. I studied Spanish and history at Edinburgh University. I've been at Bristol when I got a lectureship in 2005, been here since then. My kids were all born in Bristol, so I've been very involved in local football clubs. I'm currently a team manager in athletics at the Bristol and West Athletics Club. I've been a linesman at football. I've done a lot of driving people backwards and forwards to various sporting events. Maybe I used to be a keen cyclist, maybe I've stopped being a keen cyclist, but I promised myself I'll always get back into it. Started running during lockdown around the green area over there that you can see. Goalkeeper, Wycombe Wanderers fan, as you can see from the hat, and generally really interested in why, despite sports being some of the most important parts of most people's lives, really an understudied form of culture on the part of university departments, whether in research or in teaching. So join me on the journey as we start to explore the relationship between sports and societies, in particular in South America, in the most interesting period of history, 1860 to 1930. And I look forward to seeing you when we kick off in our first seminar on Friday.